Hey, what's up, guys? It's Gabe Just Gaming here, and today is going to be a little bit of a different video because I'm actually on my computer. It's not a great computer, so I won't be playing any Steam games or anything, but I've recently got into Magic the Gathering Online and really enjoying it. I've played Paper for quite a few years now, so give Magic Online a shot, and it's a tiny bit slow on my computer, but it's pretty fun. Anyways, this is my list. That you can pick this deck up in Magic Online for about $6. It's mono black mid-range, so it's just a lot of really cheap, really powerful cards that aren't really synergistic with a lot of things, but just work really well on their own. Let's start it in the 1-drop slot. So in the 1-drop slot, we have Bloodsoaked Champion and Dread Wander, and they both basically do the same thing. They both are a 1-mana 2/1 with some kind of downside, but they also have an ability. This one you can pay 3 and return from the graveyard to the battlefield, only if you have 1 or fewer cards in hand, and this one is just as long as you've attacked, you can return it for 2. And gifted in, rest of the 1-drops. We got 4 Fatal Push, which is basically what most of the budget is, just the Fatal Push because they're expensive, but they really help out this deck. It's really important to be able to kill your opponent's stuff so you can keep it on attacking with your creatures. So 4 Fatal Push, 4 Raven's Crime, which there's another card later that you'll see that this actually works really well with. But basically this deck, its curve stops at 4, so any extra lands, we can kind of just keep recasting this from our graveyard by paying 1 and discarding a land, which can make an opponent discard a card. So late game, if my opponent's holding on to a lot of cards and I'm just keep drawing lands, at least I'll have some kind of gas to slow them down. And then finally we have Vendetta, which is just an interesting, really budget destroy a target creature. It's non-black, can't be regenerated, but you lose life equal to that creature's toughness. So it's not great against defenders, but you don't run into those very often. In the 2-drop slot, we just have Gifted Aetherborn, 2-mana 2/3 with Death Touch Lifelink. It's just really powerful. It can shut down games sometimes. The life gain is really helpful. Also stops like people playing like combo decks where they pump out a really big creature really early on. So I can just Death Touch it. And computer froze. Oh, there we go. Also, we have 4 copies of Walk the Plank, which is destroy target non-merfolk creature. So, like I said before, it's really important that I can keep my opponent's board clear, which synergizes with one of my final cards, which is fun. But next up, 3 drops, we have Plague Belcher, 3-mana 5/4. You have to put -1/-1 counters on things. But the really good part is that all my 1-drops, my creatures, I can just put the counters on it and then bring the creature back by paying a bit of extra mana. So it's just really good value. It's basically a 3-mana 5/4 with like pay 2 mana. It's basically, I mean, I can like attack, play Plague Belcher, and then replay whatever it had before. Nizithid, this thing's really insane with the Raven's Crime from before. I make my opponent's discard cards. So basically, it's always my opponent. I don't really get to choose an opponent, but it gets -1/-1 for each card in their hand. So if it's late game and they're kind of out of gas because they might be playing like an aggro deck or something, this thing's just going to be a 3-mana 7/7. Or, maybe 6/6 or 5/5, but that's still insane for 3 mana. So that's why I'm running it. It's just really good, especially with Raven's Crime. It's kind of like the only really synergy in the deck. The only other one is with Plague Belcher, I can put a counter on a Dread Wanderer, and they lose a life because it's a zombie, but it's not really anything. And then finally we have Erebos' Titan, which is really sick. It's 4-mana 5/5. If my opponent has no creatures, it has Indestructible. And whenever a creature card leaves an opponent's graveyard, which means like go to exile or from the graveyard to the battlefield, I may discard a card. If I do, I get it back from my graveyard to my hand. There's not a lot of situations in which that actually happens, but I mean, it's a 4-mana 5/5 that can be indestructible. It's pretty good. In the sideboard, we have 4 Vampiric Link, which is just good against aggro. 4 copies of Imp's Mischief, which is really good against combo decks and any deck that looks to deal a lot of damage with spells or kind of shut me out with spells, because I can just redirect them at their face or redirect them You know, if it's a burn card, I can redirect it at their face. If it's a counter, I can redirect the counter to the Imp's Mischief. And that'll make it so it'll counter the Imp's Mischief instead of what it was originally targeting. 2 Night Creep, which is... I haven't really found a lot of use for it, but I think it's just good. I mean, all creatures become black and all lands become swamps, so I think it's really good against, like, monocolor decks, or... Actually, I guess against multicolor decks that don't have black, because it just kind of shuts them down entirely. They don't get to play anything for the turn. It's basically a 2 mana, take an extra turn against some decks. 3 copies of Golden Demise, mostly just for tokens. Just gives creatures -2/-2. I mean, the City's Blessing doesn't happen very often, but I guess late game I can get it. But the good thing about Golden Demise is, yeah, it does kill my own creatures, but the creatures it kills are the creatures that I can bring back anyways. And finally, I have 2 copies of Desecration Demon, which is just a really cheap, really powerful 4-mana creature. It's kind of to go with Erebos' Titan in like long grindy games where I'm gonna need some more end of the curve threats that'll really pressure my opponent. It's also worth considering that it's not good against token decks, but if I am putting it in against token decks, I'd also want to bring in the Golden Demise. So, I mean, these are kind of almost a package in their own way. And yeah, that's basically the deck tech, I guess you could call it. I'm going to play a few games with this, so next video will be the gameplay.